Welcome back. Now, recently Nigeria introduced the non-custodial sentencing as part of, more humane alternatives for minor and non-violent offenses. Now, this morning we're looking at how well these non-custodial sentencing is working, in Nigeria in practice. We have in the studio with us this morning Barrister Wilson Neji, who is the head legal unit Carmelite Prisoners Interest Organization, CAPIO. You're welcome.
Thank you.
Good morning and welcome.
Thank you for having me. Good morning, viewers. You're welcome.
Thank you. Now, talking about non-custodial sentencing, can you tell us about what that entails and, why, your organization prioritizes it?
Okay. When we talk about non-custodial sentences, it means outside the prison, punishment outside the prison, not sending offenders, convicts, or criminals to custody, to prison. Custody means to confine someone, to keep someone in a confined environment. Principally, when we talk about custody in criminal or in crimes, we refer to the prison, which is now called custodial centers or custodian centers. So when we talk about non-custodial, it means outside the prison, punishing offenders, criminals, outside the prison without sending them, without confining them or sending them to prison. So basically, this is what non-custodial sentences it means. That means there are various types and kinds of non-custodial sentences, which is different types of punishments given to convicts, people convicted of committing particular crimes, which punishment they can serve, they can do without going into the custodial center. So why are we in the forefront of prioritizing non-custodial sentences in our work? CAPIO, one of the civil society organizations in Nigeria, our principal work area is the rights of prisoners, inmates, persons that have been incarcerated or put into custody at the custodial centers. And over the years, for over 30 years now that CAPIO has been working at the prisons, we have seen that, and which I'm sure you too have seen, the public have seen that prison, which is before now the principal form of punishment, imprisonment, which before the introduction of non-custodial sentences has been the principal form of punishing criminals in court, offenders, has not in any way reduced the rate of crime. Rather, we have seen new waves, an increase in crime rates all over the country, in all our societies, even in the rural areas. We have also seen the prison population grow daily, grow weekly, grow monthly, grow yearly. You see the prison population growing, crime rate growing. We are not better off. We have not been better off. We are not more secure today, safer today, when we talk about crimes, even with all the prisons we have in the state and around the country. So we have seen that sending every kind of person to prison has not helped matter or has not achieved the purpose or the essence of building those prisons. Rather, we have observed and we have data to show that sending all kinds of offenders and putting everybody in one environment builds and breeds more criminals. And I can tell you today that if you look at a custodial system of prisons in Nigeria, it has become more or less a school for criminality, because you see someone who was charged for for fighting, someone who fought with somebody and one person was injured, the other person was arrested, was now arraigned in the court for assault or assault occasioning harm or attempted murder. This man ordinarily is not a criminal. He had a fight. There was a quarrel that resulted in violence. You now send him to stay in a place with a kidnapper, with an armed robber, with a thief, with a drug dealer, with all kinds of criminals, gun runners in one environment. what is going to happen? He learns the trade of criminality. He learns the act of kidnapping. He becomes schooled in the act of armed robbery, gun running. He gets information on how to operate and run criminal gangs. He gets information on where to buy a weapon, a gun, arms, and he gets educated in criminality that at the time he comes out of prison, he becomes a professional. He sees crime as nothing. Considering why he was put in prison, he said, this man looked at my trouble, this person came after me, it was just that I overpowered him in the course of a fight, and now I'm the one that was punished. He comes angry, he comes out bitter, and he wants to hit back at the society because he sees what has happened to him as injustice. And truly, when you look at the circumstances and the facts of each case, each person that has been sent to prison, you find out truly that the society has done injustice to many persons in the prison, in custody. And so many of them come out in anger, embittered, and say, well, I didn't kill anybody, I didn't steal, I just had a financial transaction that he was not charged for fraud. Because the way our society operates, I have an agreement with you. Eventually we fall out of the agreement. The next thing, you go to the police, you tell the police stories, you are able to pay the police, and they arrest me, charge me for obtaining by false pretenses, charge me for fraud, charge me for anything just to punish me. Because the average Nigerian sees prison as a form of punishment, showing power, showing that you have money, showing that I am stronger than you. So I am sent to prison for purely a commercial transaction with you that eventually that got solved. And so, is it deserving for me to go to prison? No, to my mind. So when we look at all these things, we say it's good. We begin to treat each person, each offender, each case properly with the principles of reformation. If you conclude that this person is bad, how do we make him good? Will the society be better off for him to remain bad, or to give him opportunities to become a better person, to become responsible, to become law-abiding? So non-custodial sentences pursues the principles of reformation, takes into consideration the victim of the offense. An offense has been committed, somebody has lost something. If you send this person to prison, the victim goes home empty-handed, goes back home with nothing. What he has lost remains lost. This other person goes to prison for 1 year, 2 years, he comes back. Everybody considers nothing happened. But when we talk about non-custodial sentence, it considers the position, the welfare, remedy for the victim. This man has suffered a loss of 1 million. How do we recover the 1 million? Is there a way we can bring the criminal, get the offender to pay back either materially or the money worth of what was taken from this victim, which imprisonment does not do? So these are some of the reasons why we are pushing and advocating for the use and increased use of non-custodial sentences as a form of punishment for offenders.
All right. So how effective has the non-custodial sentencing been so far since the passage of the Nigerian Constitution, Correctional Service Act of 2019?
Okay. Well, even before the Nigerian Correctional Service Act of 2030 came into being, first it was Lagos State that introduced non-custodial sentences in 2011, when the Lagos State government enacted, first in Nigeria, the administration of criminal justice law. After Lagos, the National Assembly followed suit by enacting the Administration of Criminal Justice Act 2015 that covers all the federal high courts, the Court of Appeal, the Supreme Court, and the High Court and Magistrate Court of the Federal Capital Territory, Abuja. After that, in 2015, several states began to enact, because it was a reform in our criminal justice system, introducing that non-custodial sentences. And in Enugu State, the Enugu State Administration of Criminal Justice law that incorporated non-custodial sentences was enacted in 2017. How has it been effective? Not very effective, because it is not much used. The records we have, because we are, when in Enugu State, talk about criminal justice, the criminal justice sector, Capio is at the center. Not many courts are using non-custodial sentences. The records we have show that during the COVID pandemic in 2020, 2021, and the fear of the spread of the disease, there was a move not to send more persons into custody, into prison, in order not to spread COVID. So at that rate, at Abuja, in several other states, many courts began to use non-custodial sentences like sweeping community service, like parole, like fine, like compensation, like probation. And after the COVID passed, it's like we reverted to the status quo of sending everybody to.
But was it working effectively
it worked
then?
Effectively, and even today in Enugu State, today is Friday. If you follow me to the magistrate court premises in Enugu, you will find offenders carrying out community service sentences by sweeping the court premises, by cutting the lawns, the grasses, fetching water, and doing such other jobs as ordered by the court as their own punishment for the different offenses they committed and they have been found guilty for. Why? We believe it's going to do more good using non-custodial sentences. Why is it so? Many times, people are sent to prison, sent into custody. The victim of the crime is left empty-handed. He goes home still angry. He goes home still bitter. He doesn't even see the justice that the criminal, so to say, has been sent to prison. Because to many victims of crime, what is justice to them? Recovery of what they have lost. Compensation for what has been taken away from them. They want to be put back to the position they were before the crime committed. So when many of them go home empty-handed, and the offenders, the criminals in quote, has been sent to prison, they don't see the justice in it. And after a while, the person comes back home. And many times, this due to the intricacies and the bureaucracy in the justice sector, particularly criminal trials, so much delay, so many reasons why many times offenders are even let off the hook. They are loosed, and you see him back at home. The victim is not happy seeing him just like that. But this is what non-custodial sentences are going to do by providing compensation, restitution, damages as forms of punishment, where the offender is made to pay, to bring back, to repair for what he took, for what he damaged. For instance, somebody is charged for arson. He bought somebody houses, millions. He goes to prison. The damaged house remains damaged. If the owner of the house is not able to repair it, to renovate it, to put it back to what it was, the house remains like that. But it could be a punishment, a not considered punishment, ordering the offender and his family to repair the house that has been burnt, to replace the phone that has been stolen, to pay back the money that was stolen, either in equal value or even more, or with a property worth the value of what was damaged or taken.
So what if the person cannot afford it?
He goes to prison. If he can't afford it, there are other forms of non-custodial punishment.
Which leads me to ask you, what would you say are the biggest barriers or gaps in this effective adoption of non-custodial sentencing in Nigeria?
First of all, for me, and from my work experience and interactions with stakeholders in the criminal justice sector, I would say that the biggest barrier is ignorance. Not many lawyers, sorry to say that, are conversant with how non-custodial sentences work. Not many lawyers encourage and advocate for non-custodial sentence, because I call lawyers first, because if I represent an offender, a defendant in a criminal trial, my first duty is to bring to him the options available, get the information with him, get his buy-in, not to force him to admit to a crime he didn't commit, or to admit to a crime if he doesn't want to. It's not for me to impose my will or my opinions on him, but I have a duty to inform him of all the avenues available to him in that matter and allow him take a decision. Many lawyers don't do that. Many magistrates don't do that. Many judges don't do that. Secondly, there is still this misgiving that non-custodial sentences is not a punishment. Majority of us in the society, the average Nigerian, still sees imprisonment as the only punishment. But it's unfortunate that when you go to prison, there are millionaires in prison, there are big men in prison, there are people who even eat much better than they eat at home in prison if they can afford it. So many things happens there. So the society have the wrong perception, image of what the prison is. The thinking is that somebody is in prison is in hell. It's not correct. It's not so. There is basically what we enjoy outside the prison that they don't enjoy there. Very few. Principally, what the punishment, what is taken away from persons in prison is their freedom of movement. It's just a restriction. Ordinarily, they do any other thing they want to do that we can do. So we have the average Nigerian still have this wrong perception about imprisonment and not consider sentence, not seeing it as a form of punishment. So the buying in is still low, it's still small, and that is why CAPU is still pushing for the buying in of judges, the courts, lawyers, CSOs, and government institutions. Another barrier is facilities. We need facilities to implement effectively non-custodial sentences. Like if you look at Europe, look at the US, where non-custodial sentences is introduced. In fact, there was a time one of the past executive directors of CAPU went for a human rights course in Canada. They visited a prison. You'll be shocked, in many countries in Europe, there are prisons you won't find up to 10 persons. There was a prison they visited that was empty. In fact, in Europe, in some countries, some prisons have been converted to schools, to some other things, because they do no longer push people into prison. If you go to many countries around the world, other countries that effectively implement non-custodial sentences, many prisons are empty. The crime rate is reducing. You know, this is the picture we're looking at, but we need the facilities. We need rehabilitation centers. We need community service officers. We need probation officers. We need even the officers of the Nigerian Correctional Service to follow the law to effectively implement non-custodial sentences. So these are, to my mind and from what I've seen, is the major barriers to effective implementation of non-custodial sentences. There's still this misgiving, you know. But the same thing they consider as not punishment is actually because, for instance, someone is sentenced to community service. He wears an Appleman ID to tell the society that this is an offender. There's this effect of naming and shaming. Because there are people in prison, their families will tell you they are abroad, but they are in prison. There are persons who will stay 5 years, 10 years, 15 years in prison, and they come out and the story goes out that they came back from abroad. They were defrauded abroad, they were robbed abroad, but he has been in prison. There was a time, a case in Nigeria, somebody in prison almost defrauded a cousin to a sitting vice president. What saved them was that the vice president got to know as a relation, because she was asking for so much money that the family began to worry. What do I do with this much money? And she told them, it's my fiancé. My fiancé's mother, my mother-in-law to be, is sick and they need this money to carry out such surgery. By the time they tracked, of course, being a sitting vice president, had all the facilities to track, and they tracked the supposed in-law and mother-in-law to inmates in Enugu prison here. So this is what happened. But this ordinarily wouldn't have been so. So you see that the thing we see as we are helping criminals is not true. There is this element of stigma. Nobody wants the public to know that he's a thief, he's an offender, he's a bad person. But non-considered sentences tends to expose offenders, criminals for who they are. For you to know that this man is a criminal, this man committed this crime. They avoid it. You know, so
okay, so let's look at people taking advantage of this particular sentencing, as to say that all you have to do is commit one little crime and you don't have to spend so much time in prison. You just have to do the non-custodial sentencing for a period of time and you're back to being a free person. Is this not like an escape route for some persons?
No, well, like that's what I was just trying to say. Some people may look at it as an escape route, but it's not an escape route. First of all, any punishment given is at the whims and caprices of the court, the judge or the magistrate. Like what we say, discretion to the opinion of the court. So you might think that this is a small offense, but the court is empowered to look at you, look at your behavior, look at your language, look at your attitude, hear from family members, neighbors, the kind of person you are, and knowing your kind of person, it will be obvious to the court that non-custodial sentences will not be suitable for this person. Okay. So what non-custodial sentence does is to look at the person first, the age of the person, the criminal record of the person. So it doesn't end with whether it's a small offense or big offense. Even what we say big offense, the court can look at this person and conclude after hearing from everybody concerned that this man never had intention to do this. Or, for instance, there's a life case, a woman had to steal, was arrested and charged for stealing and sent to prison because she couldn't meet the bail conditions. When she was asked even at the police station why, the woman said, for 2 days, I and my children have not eaten. I have tried to beg. We didn't get much to. So she stole out of hunger. Stealing, I'm not saying that what she did is right. But in such circumstance, what do you think would be appropriate punishment for that woman? And there are several other cases like that. Several other cases. Though ignorance of the law is not an excuse. So to say or to assume or believe that non-custodial sentence is an escape route is not correct, because even for the supposed little offenses, the court can look at the person involved, look at the offender and say, this one is not suitable for non-custodial sentences. He should be isolated from the society and kept away, particularly if he has criminal records.
Right. Now, earlier on, you made mention of, as opposed to being in the prison where it's only your freedom of movement that is being infringed on. When you're doing community service, you wear the badge and everybody gets to see you. So it's a form of a shame, kind of a better punishment in this case. Now, we also know that there are some people who have been convicted of minor offenses that are innocent of what they were convicted of. So do you think that this non-custodial sentencing affects dignity and human rights of these offenders, especially those convicted of minor or non-violent offenses, or even those who are innocent but have been convicted anyway?
Yes, there's what we call parole. Parole is a form of remedy or a soft landing for convicts. Somebody has been convicted, whether rightly or wrongly, he is serving a punishment. For instance, somebody has been convicted and sentenced to 2-year term of imprisonment and is already serving. Maybe he has stayed for 6 months, he has stayed for 1 year. There is what we call parole. How does parole is to reduce a prison sentence on the grounds of the remorseful, responsible behavior of the offender, the convict. Let's even take it that he committed offense, but having passed through the police station trial and is now sentenced, he realizes that what he did was wrong. He repents, he changes, he's reformed, he begins to behave better. The law allows the officers of the Nigerian Correctional Service to look at the behaviors, the attitudes of all inmates in their custody and make reports and application to the court that sentencing them, requesting for a parole. That is, when the person has not completed his term of imprisonment but is allowed to go home, he's released from prison on the grounds of good behavior. So is there in our legal system? The law provides for it and is an option for the courts, for lawyers, and for the officers of the correctional service to do. But the problem is that we don't do. So where this is the case, all we need is a report, a recommendation from the officers of the Nigerian Correctional Service who are with him daily, who monitor him, who sees him, to write a report on how he has been reformed, how he has become responsible, how he has become good, and ask for a parole. And if it is approved, he is released immediately from custody, even without completing the 2-year prison term that they gave into him.
All right, then. Thank you so much, Barrister Wilson, for joining us this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And Barrister Wilson Neji is the head legal unit, Camlet Prisoners Interest Organization, CAPIO. And we talked on the effectiveness of non-custodial sentencing in Nigerian Correctional Service Centers. Of course, if you just join in, you can watch this conversation on our YouTube channel, and don't forget to always leave a comment in the comment section. Thank you for joining us this morning.
Thank
once
you.
again.
Thanks for having me.
We'll go on a short
Have
break
a nice
and
day.
we'll be back.